he said, was in charge of drafting the dossier. I went away from a meeting with Mr. Campbell as the person in charge of the whole exercise. Mr. Scarlett accepted there had been suggestions from Mr. Campbell and other press officers about language and presentation. James Dingemans QC, counsel for the inquiry, asked him, were members of the intelligence agencies aware of this arrangement? Yes, replied Mr. Scarlett. Mr. Dingemans, did they have any concerns? Mr. Scarlett, there were no worries of any kind expressed to me at any stage about the propriety of this arrangement. From his base in the Cabinet Office, Mr. Scarlett sought out the very latest intelligence. The inquiry was shown the wording of the assessment on the 45-minute claim. Dated the 9th of September, it read, Iraq has probably dispersed its special weapons. Intelligence also indicates that chemical and biological munitions could be with military units and ready for firing within 20 to 45 minutes. Only the 45-minute figure went into the dossier. The inquiry was also shown an email from the Cabinet Office dated the 11th of September, 13 days before the dossier's publication, which appealed for any last-minute information. Number 10, through the Joint Intelligence Chairman, want the document to be as strong as possible. This is therefore a last, ! Call for any items of intelligence that the agencies think can and should be included. But, despite all of this, insisted Mr. Scarlett, he was not trying to make the case for war. In no sense was it a document to make a case for anything, he told the inquiry. Mr. Scarlett was then taken to the events after Dr. David Kelly had come forward and admitted that he'd discussed the dossier with the BBC's Andrew Gilligan. It was Mr. Scarlett who'd suggested that the scientist should be subjected to a security-style interview. All he'd meant, he told the inquiry, was that the questioning of Dr. Kelly should be thorough and forensic. The final witness of the day was another powerful figure from Whitehall, the Cabinet Office Security and Intelligence Coordinator, Sir David Omand. He was asked if Dr. Kelly had given his consent to being named. Sir David said, I do not recall a specific reference to his consent. Tomorrow, intense interest will focus on the first Cabinet Minister to testify to the inquiry, a man who was closely involved in these events, the Defence Secretary, Geoff Hoon. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, at the Royal Courts of Justice.
Conflicting goals of cost, schedule and safety lost out. That was the official verdict on the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster today, and investigators have warned that there could be another tragedy unless sweeping changes are made at the American space agency NASA. 7 astronauts died when the shuttle disintegrated as it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere on the 1st of February.
7, we have a go for main engine start. 5.
Long before Columbia lifted off, a sequence of management failings had condemned the 7 crew on board to disaster. These blurred close-ups show how insulating foam hit the shuttle's left wing, but this had happened before, so no serious alarm was raised. While the astronauts got on with their mission, some officials on the ground debated the risks of the foam strike, though nothing was done. But when the shuttle re-entered the atmosphere, the damage to the left wing suddenly really mattered. Superhot gases poured in through a hole. By then the shuttle was doomed, and the next sight was of streaks of debris across the Texas sky. The investigators went through everything. Their first job was to check if foam really could have damaged the wing. Yes, it was to blame.
In 4 simple words, the foam did it.
But today the investigators went further than that, blaming NASA's managers as well.
All levels of leadership are going to have to actively drive the bad cultural traits out of the organization, like stifling communications and stomping on engineers and things like that, and they're going to have to drive it out. And it is not simple, and that is why we did not make it a return-to-flight issue, because we know it can't be done between now and the next flight. It'll take a long time.
The report condemns NASA's handling of shuttle flights as overconfident. It says there are blind spots on safety, and engineers are so pressured to keep the shuttles flying, they even feel under the gun. And what's the astronauts' view? Well, British-born Michael Full says the shuttle's design is a problem.
Because of the architecture of the big explosive tank being to the side of the shuttle, those issues are much more fundamental. We don't know what's around the corner, and we haven't got enough imagination to see what's around the corner. in those areas. So I do believe, and it's being stated already in the commissions looking at the shuttle system, an accident will happen again if we keep flying the vehicle a long time.
And NASA is determined to fly again, maybe next year. It says it will use today's report as a blueprint for reform. Well, it's said that before, and then let ambition override safety. David Shrookman, BBC News.
The former Conservative Prime Minister Sir Edward Heath is in hospital tonight, suffering from a clot on the lung. Sir Edward, who's 87, became ill during a visit to Austria. He was brought back by air ambulance this afternoon and taken to King Edward VII Hospital in central London. Our political correspondent Sean Lay is in Westminster. Sean, what more can you tell us about Mr Heath's condition?
Well, Fiona, within literally the last few minutes, we've had a statement from Sir Edward's private secretary who accompanied him on that journey back to London. He says that Sir Edward was admitted to hospital in Salzburg to be treated for a minor stomach upset. As a result of tests conducted there, a clot on his lung was found and the decision was taken to fly him back to London. That was done by the Tyrolean Air Ambulance Service, and along with a medical team and his private secretary, he flew back to RAF Northolt, the London airbase, which is used for cases of this kind involving prominent public figures. Sir Edward was then transferred, as you say, to the Edward VII Hospital in central London, where he's being treated tonight. We've no further word on his condition at the moment, but the current leader of the Conservative Party, Ian Duncan Smith, has tonight issued a statement expressing his sadness at hearing the news of Sir Edward's ill health. He said that the man who had led the Tory party for 10 years, been Prime Minister for nearly 4, and more than 50 years an MP, would be in the thoughts of all those in the Tory party tonight.
Sean, thanks very much indeed. The number of US troops killed in Iraq after the fall of Saddam Hussein is now greater than those killed during the war. That figure was reached today with the death of another American serviceman. 2 others were injured in the attack on a military convoy west of Baghdad. American troops today staged a dawn raid north of Baghdad, targeting crime bosses they believe are attacking coalition forces. Caroline Hawley reports.
Dawn, and the full might of the US military bears down on Khalis, north of Baghdad. A massive raid. Its target this time not Saddam Hussein loyalists, but criminal gangs who thrived in the lawlessness here and who don't want the Americans around. No mercy from US troops. Suspects detained as their families looked on. The operation's meant to make this area a safer place, but US methods here risk stirring up further trouble. Still, US forces say they're satisfied.
The results have been very good. We've captured our 3 target personnel. We have them detained, and we'll get them processed through the justice system.
In all, more than 20 people were captured, but the ringleader, the godfather of the gang, got away. Troops are still searching for him.
The Americans clearly hadn't bargained when they came here on having to fight on quite as many fronts as they're fighting now. Their problem is how to control the lawlessness and violence without making more enemies.
Today, US soldiers on alert after another attack on US forces. A roadside bomb on a convoy on the outskirts of Baghdad. More American troops have now died in Iraq than were killed in the war to unseat Saddam Hussein. An unhappy milestone for America's hard-pressed military. Caroline Hawley, BBC News, Baghdad.
President Bush tonight vowed there'd be no retreat from Iraq, despite the rising number of American casualties. He said terrorists were gathering in Iraq and asked the American public to have patience until they were defeated. Nick Brandt is in Washington. Nick.
Fiona, as you can probably tell, storm clouds above the White House, and for once that metaphor seems apt. You remember that since the attacks of September the 11th, this president has had the aura of political invincibility. Approval ratings in the 70s and the 80s. Now they are hovering just above the 50% mark. And as the American death toll rises, his political problems mount.
The Stars and Stripes backdrop for this campaign fundraiser. George W. Bush still cashing in on his record as a wartime president. But it's the after-war in Iraq that's denting his popularity. Not that you'll hear him admit it. Take this speech. No mention of the mounting American death toll. Just his routine script line about the ongoing fight against terror.
This country will not rest, we will not tire, and we will not stop until this danger to civilization is removed.
As far as the post-war problems of Iraq are concerned, there are times when he seems to be in denial. But when Air Force One carried the president to a veterans conference in Missouri, the guerrilla attacks against American and British troops were harder to ignore.
Retreat in the face of terror would only invite further and bolder attacks. There will be no retreat.
So much has changed since May the 1st. The Top Gun moment when the president declared that major combat operations were over. Mission accomplished boasted the banner, but a different kind of war was only just beginning.
Well, Nick, given the steadily rising number of American casualties, how big a political problem is Iraq becoming for the president?
Three things have come together, Fiona. First of all, the problems of reconstruction in Iraq, the blood sacrifice and the financial costs as well. Second, the failure to find weapons of mass destruction. Not as big an issue for George W. Bush as Tony Blair, but still significant. And third, the big sleeper issue for next year's election, the problems with the economy. June, unemployment reached a 9-year high. Those three things have come together, dare I say it, the ingredients of a perfect political storm.
Okay, Nick, thanks very much. Still to come on tonight's programme, dumping the catch while British trawlers are having to throw back thousands of dead fish. And a win for Qatar by the Kenyan offered a salary for life to switch sides. Thousands of infertile couples may qualify for free IVF treatment under new proposals for the NHS. The National Institute for Clinical Excellence wants IVF to be made more widely available to women under 40 in England and Wales. Critics say it will divert money from other areas of the NHS that need it.
At this fertility clinic in Newcastle, they see both NHS and private patients. Whether a woman pays depends on her age and where she lives. Today's guidance seeks to end the postcode lottery, offering those under 40 3 cycles of treatment for free. They must have been diagnosed with a fertility problem or failed to conceive naturally for 3 years.
It would be a big change for certain parts of the country where there's no fertility treatment, no IVF treatment provided at all. Other parts of the country, like here, it will make a significant improvement in that most people who have 3 treatment cycles will actually then take home a baby, which is what we're trying to do for them.
The aim is to bridge the gap between health regions that will and won't pay. Here in Tyneside, you get a real sense of the postcode lottery. If you live across the water in Gateshead or South Tyneside, IVF treatment's available up to the age of 41. But if you live in Northumberland and you're more than 35, you won't be accepted. Anna Ralph's been told she'd have to wait 4 years to have IVF treatment on the NHS. But at 29, she knows now is her best chance of success. So she's amongst the thousands of women paying for treatment, begrudgingly.
It is our right to found a family. It says so in the Human Rights Act. And for that reason, if for no other reason, we should be able to have treatment on the NHS.
But before today's proposals get the go-ahead, ministers will have to weigh up the costs. Around 1 in 6 couples have fertility problems. Each cycle of treatment costs around £2,000. Increasing access could cost the NHS anything between £100 and £400 million. It may seem small change out of the £75 billion spent every year on health, but resources are tight.
The issue really is that the money's got to come from somewhere, and that means it's a rationing decision. And somebody somewhere is going to be a loser if people get IVF treatment free on the NHS.
There are those that argue that infertility is a lifestyle issue, with many women trying for a family later on in life. But some experts point out there's nearly always an underlying medical problem, and so the NHS should pick up the tab. Karen Allen, BBC News, Newcastle.
Deaths from heart disease in the United Kingdom have fallen by 1/3 in the past decade, according to a new study. The report from Edinburgh University says the drop is due to a rapid rise in the range of treatments available, but it warns that survival rates vary widely from region to region. Indian police have stepped up security at airports, railway stations and religious buildings in Mumbai or Bombay following yesterday's car bombings. 2 bombs exploded, killing more than 50 people and injuring more than 150. The Indian government has blamed Islamic militants for the attack, the latest in a series of atrocities in the city. Our correspondent Adam Minot has spent the day there.
The people of Mumbai are cremating their dead. 50 were murdered in the devastating bomb attacks. 35-year-old Omnath Duria, leaving a wife and 3 children, is turned to ashes. A family devastated. The response to the atrocity, increased security and condemnation from leading politicians. The Deputy Prime Minister, normally the scourge of Pakistan-backed militancy, has been more circumspect this time. The country, he said, must unite in the battle against terrorism. In Mumbai, no organisation has claimed responsibility, but many say it was Hindu rioting and murder in nearby Gujarat last year which led to Muslim revenge in the city yesterday.
One of the bombs went off in this street, now crowded with people again. The problem that India has faced for the past 50 years is that in religious terms, every action has had an equal and opposite reaction.
And the minority Muslims in Mumbai are fearful. Shabir Alim owns a traditional medicine store in the Muslim quarter. Anyone would be scared. We have to sort out this madness, he told me. But many say the cycle of religious violence has intensified.
There'll be more terrorist strikes. There might even be more pogroms of the type that happened in Gujarat. And where are we going to stop? When is the politics of hate? How long are we going to continue? Because this country will not advance unless this type of politics is put to rest.
And tonight, large numbers gathered to look at the twisted wrecks of cars destroyed in one of the blasts. The threat of further religious-inspired violence and strife in the city cannot be ruled out. Adam Minot, BBC News, Mumbai.
Fishermen in Devon and Cornwall are throwing thousands of dead monkfish back into the sea. They say they're forced to because of European fish quotas, even though it's been a bumper year for the fish. The government now plans to lobby Brussels for a change in the rules. John Kay reports from Cornwall.
A heartbreaking task for these Cornish fishermen. After 7 days and nights at sea, they must throw thousands of pounds worth of dead monkfish back into the water.
Throwing my wages away.
The EU set tight quotas for this year, expecting there to be a shortage. But trawlermen say there is so much monkfish they can't help but catch it, and then they have to dump it again.
Something's got to happen. This is ludicrous. Just dumping fish back in the sea and leaving it rotting.
These trawlermen say they have absolutely no choice. If they take more stock into harbour than they're supposed to, they can be fined thousands of pounds. So tons of fish are being thrown back into the water every single week. Fishing villages like Newlyn are among the poorest places in the UK.
48.50.
People here are furious that French and Spanish trawlers can profit from the abundant stocks, but local fishermen cannot.
The whole village relies upon its fishing industry, and to waste such a valuable natural resource in this way is totally obscene, and it's all due to the common fisheries policy.
Government scientists have now been out to sea, and they agree with the trawlermen that there does appear to be more monkfish than the EU predicted. So the government will ask Brussels for an immediate review of the quota. Fishermen say that can't happen too soon. Incomes have been hit hard. These men have just been paid £300, and it must last them a fortnight.
It's a joke. Total.
They claim half their income is now rotting on the seabed, a threat to the environment and to a whole way of life. John Kay, BBC News, Cornwall.
Football, and Chelsea have tonight signed the Argentina striker Hernan Crespo for around £16 million and made it into the group stages of the Champions League, beating MSK Žilina 3-0 in their qualifying round tie. There were also 4 games in the Premiership tonight. Charlton drew 2-2 with Everton. The games at Leeds and Leicester finished goalless, but a hat-trick from Teddy Sheringham helped promoted Portsmouth beat Bolton 4-0. In the World Athletics Championships in Paris, Great Britain's Kelly Holmes has won a silver medal in the 800 metres. The 33-year-old was overtaken in the final straight by her training partner, Maria Mutola of Mozambique. It's Britain's second medal of the championships. And in the men's 3,000-metre steeplechase, there was a first gold medal of the championships for the small Middle Eastern state of Qatar. It was won by Saif Saeed Shaheen, who a year ago was running for a different country with a different name. Adam Parsons explains an extraordinary tale from the track.
It's so easy for the Kenyans in the steeplechase that they can even just send the brothers to win it.
Last summer's Commonwealth Games steeplechase victory for Kenya's Stephen Cherono, with his brother Abraham coming third.
Shaheen comes through to win it, and Ellie in second place. In third.
But now Stephen has abandoned Kenya, and here in Paris he's running in Qatar's colours instead. He's changed his name, his brothers disowned him, and Kenyans are furious about the defection of a runner they once idolised. For one of their greatest ever athletes, it feels like betrayal.
It's me who started training him, so I know it's really sad even for me. I mean to have lost him. That is the guy that the whole country depended on him to win a medal in these championships.
In Kenya, Stephen Cherono had grown up amid a rich heritage of long and middle distance running, and he'd become one of the nation's brightest young stars. But then he received an offer that he just couldn't refuse. The Qatari government offered him $1,000 a month for the rest of his life if he took up citizenship, and some handsome win bonuses for getting gold at championships like these.
You can't have countries like Kenya that have contributed so much to distance running in the world suddenly just becoming feeder countries for countries that have large checkbooks.
This is Shaheen of Qatar, and it's
Tonight, a sizzling finale. Cherono, now renamed Saif Shaheen, racing the Kenyan Ezekiel Kemboi to the line. It ended with him taking a thrilling gold. For Kenya, a devastating defeat in a favourite event, but Shaheen is now Qatar's hero, although nobody from the team was commenting here. Their athlete has been derided as a mercenary, but tonight crowned a world champion. Adam Parsons, BBC News, Paris.
We'll be back a little later with the latest on the day's headlines, but now it's time to join our news teams across the UK. Bye for now.